Welcome back to another episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, and we have so much to cover in this one. This might be the first time where, in the same week, we've had multiple episodes from different shows that were both just kind of like mind-blowing episodes. Both The Bad Batch and Mandalorian were fantastic this week. Joey and I briefly talked before we started. We're going to try to keep it condensed if we can, but there's a lot to cover and a lot to talk about, in addition to a ton of other cool Star Wars news. So we're excited to cover it all today. But before we get to any of that, Joey, what's going on? How are you?
Good. Long time no see, Ben.
Yes.
It hasn't even been a full 24 hours since we've talked last and seen each other. But here we are again with Star Wars and Hoth Hangout once again. Yeah, I'm excited this week for sure. I wasn't sure how the episodes were going to turn out with Mandalorian and Bad Batch, but they came through for me, and I am excited for that and all the news that was upcoming this week.
Indeed, yeah. And if you haven't managed, those of you either listening on Apple or Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, if you haven't managed to check out Joey and I's reaction to the second episode of the third season of The Mandalorian, that is up on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Definitely check that out. And if you're not subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button while you're there too, as we journey closer to that 100 number. Yeah. Another reminder that if you ever want to shoot us an email or a question over on Twitter, at Hoth Hangout on Twitter and hothhangout@gmail.com, definitely shoot us a question or email. We can do a mailbag segment. We need to actually like plan one of those sometime soon. I keep
That would be
saying
great,
it,
yeah.
and I think it'd be fun to get a few questions on here. Hopefully, maybe even as soon as next week. So definitely check that out as well. Before we get into the Mandalorian and Bad Batch stuff, because we do have a lot to cover, we've got a couple items to note real quickly when it comes to the overall world of Star Wars. First of all, today is International Women's Day, so Joey and I are going to give our favorite Star Wars character. I don't know if you want to go first or if you want me to go first. Our favorite female Star Wars character, I should say. I don't think I said that. I meant to. I should probably think that you know who mine is. I'm sure you certainly do. So I guess I'll get mine out of the way, and I'll just say that Ahsoka is by far my favorite female Star Wars character.
way.
Big
No
shock,
way.
big surprise. I don't know if I need to go into detail about why I do. I feel like I've probably gone on several rants in previous versions of previous episodes of the Hoth
Let us
Hangout
know.
podcast.
Let us know right here. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, for me, she really embodies like what a strong female character should be. Not saying that there have been recent additions to Star Wars that aren't that, as some people. I've heard that argument from people. As much as I will say, I know I'm not a big fan of the sequels, but I feel like there are parts of Rey's character, particularly like her strength, like and her will to overcome, that I do admire. So I will say, as much as like I not am super high on the sequels, there are parts of them, particularly the characters themselves, that I do enjoy. Sorry, side tangent. Back to Ahsoka. She really, for me, embodies what like a strong female character should be in Star Wars. The Clone Wars, apart from being arguably, I hate to say that over like some of the original trilogy stuff, especially Episode 5, but I mean, arguably the Clone Wars is my favorite Star Wars content in general. Because you really get to spend a lot of time with her, and you get to see her transformation from the point of being this small Padawan, and see her transformation into becoming this grown person who ultimately makes a decision to step away from the order. And through all of that, I just feel like her journey as a character, maybe outside of like Anakin or Luke, you could even put it right up there with both of those two, I think, really is what Star Wars is about for me. So I won't rant any longer about Ahsoka, and I'll let you answer what your favorite female Star Wars character is.
Nice pick. I am completely shocked. I did not think it was going to be
Didn't see
Ahsoka,
that one
honestly.
coming, did you?
Didn't see that one. Yeah. Well, first off, happy International Women's Day to all of the women out there. So, thank you for being you, and being the strong women that you are, and being so supportive of everyone around you. This just we're blessed to have you all in our lives, so thank you. But for my pick, I've got two that I just am in between. That I just love these two characters so much. One is on the lighter side, one's on the dark side. So
I'm trying to think of who the dark side would.
so Asajj Ventress is just a
Oh, okay.
cool character. You saw how much power she has, and especially in the Dooku book, the Jedi. What is the Jedi Lost? Is that what it's called? Had a huge role in there. I saw a little bit more of that in the original Clone Wars, that was shown on Cartoon Network. Just her character, and being on, because normally you would see, you don't see a lot of females on the dark side. So to have her kind of be that in canon or whatever, I mean, is very cool to have that. So on the dark side, it's her. On the lighter side of things, I want to give you one guess. I'll give you one guess to see if you can get it. I'd be shocked if you can get it, but let me see.
You'd be surprised if I do get it?
Yes, actually.
Okay, so it's not gonna be Leia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's gonna be Rey.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna be Padme.
Okay.
So if you're surprised that I would get it, is it prequel, original trilogy, or sequel trilogy? Or none of the above.
It's kind of in the
original,
movie. It's a floater. There. It's a floater, yeah.
Oh, oh my goodness. What the heck is her name? It's like right on I can see her face. Oh my goodness. Is she a bounty hunter?
She's not a bounty hunter.
Oh, no. I thought I had it.
Oh, that's good though. That's a good one though. That's a good one.
I don't know. Tell me.
Hera Syndulla.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm upset at myself that I didn't get that.
It's a good one though, right? I mean, she was the embodiment of bravery. She led their crew. She was the leader of their crew. She was the mom of their crew. She was one of the best pilots out there. She's in comic books. She's in animated series. She's in books. She's everywhere, and she's awesome. So I really like her character. Of course, like the Leias and the Padmes, they're great, but I feel that Hera kind of really does it all. She did it all,
Mm-hmm.
So I loved her character in Rebels, and the relationship she had with each of the characters. I think it was just so well done. And we're going to talk about Rebels in a little bit, but like just the way they were a family, and she was like the leader of that family, the mom of that family. I just thought that was the coolest thing to kind of see that on the screen for in an animated series for what was it, 4 years? I think they were on for 4 seasons. If I'm not
think
mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think definitely Hera Syndulla is my favorite Star Wars female character.
That's a really good pick, honestly. Have you read or seen the book A New Dawn, Star Wars A New Dawn?
Yes.
You have read it?
Yes, I've read it.
I haven't read it, and that's one of the ones that's on the top of my list. And it's funny because one of the other ones that's on the top of my list is one that's related to your other character that you mentioned, Asajj, Dark Disciple.
Dark Disciple.
I haven't read either of those, and they're both like two of the three that are on the top of my list right now.
They are amazing books. You have to read those books.
I do need to.
I know you're on the legend side of things with the books, but yeah, you gotta jump on some of those. Some of those as well. But
I think is Dark Disciple technically because I think A New Dawn is canon, right?
Mm-hmm. But I think Dark Disciple is too. I think so. I thought so.
Interesting. That's even more reason I need to read it.
There you go.
There you go. But yeah, great pick with Hera there. Rebels as a whole is just a fantastic show, and I think easily the most underrated piece of Star Wars. For me personally, at least, I love Rebels, and I think amongst the Star Wars community, it's underrated. What it brings to the lore of everything. Which, speaking of Rebels, by the way, 3 days ago at the time of this recording, currently March 8th. On March 5th was the 5th anniversary of the Rebels finale, something we also wanted to make note of. Such a fantastic show, and
God.
I hope we get another show like that. I mean, Mando and Bad Batch have been great, but the amount that Rebels added to the lore really was what made it for me.
I mean, even the way it ended with, not well, Kanan had passed, but with Ezra and with Sabine and Ahsoka and Hera. I mean, and Hera had a child. I mean, there's a lot still kind of it's big meatballs just hanging out there in the
Yeah.
universe, just waiting for the other side to happen. So hopefully, maybe we see an appearance in maybe the Ahsoka series of some of these characters in live action. There's been rumors about that, so hopefully, I mean, I would love to see if we saw Hera on screen like that. Oh man, I'm gonna lose it,
Mm.
bro. I'm gonna be so happy.
Ezra. I honestly think I think we could see Sabine maybe at some point in Mando, or I hope
I
at
don't see why
least.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. In other Star Wars news, Taika Waititi is looking to star in his own Star Wars movie. And in addition to that, all the other Star Wars films up until this point have not been greenlit. So I believe the soonest we'll be getting a new Star Wars movie, I'd be shocked if we even get one this soon, is December 2025. At this point, I don't even know if Star Wars is in too much of a hurry to get back to going to things on the silver screen rather than the direct to Disney Plus sort of
Right.
style. I think it works really well, and I don't think they realized how well it was going to work until the success of Mando, and now they were like, well, we might as well just keep doing it if it's working. And a lot of that was probably COVID, during that era as
Hmm.
well. But I think in many ways the direct to streaming platform, episode by episode format, and it allows like the hype to build too, which is kind of fun as well. But I do miss being in a theater for Star Wars movies. So hopefully we get back to that at some point.
Yeah, I think when COVID hit, I don't think anybody knew what to do, right? And when but these things like Disney, I mean, things like Netflix and Hulu are kind of already out there. Disney Plus was kind of on its way, or they were like they just made it in there as well, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we've talked about it earlier on this podcast that sometimes when you have years between movies, that is just too much hype to be built up for a 2 hour movie, 2.5 hour movie that ultimately either doesn't hit the mark or possibly not hit the mark. Not whereas when you have these shows that have 8 episodes, 10 episodes, 16 episodes over the course of a couple of months, as a viewer for me, that's more fulfilling because I would
Mm-hmm.
rather have that week by week than have to wait for years for a movie now. Now, there is something to the movie experience, as you said. I think, you and I come from that generation where that's kind of part of it, part of the overall experience of any type of fandom, any type of show or movie that you really love. But I don't know, maybe we're moving away from it. I mean, I've seen tons of movie theaters close down over the past,
Yeah.
year. So I don't know if that lasts, and it's unfortunate. But I think I think we're fine. I think Liam Neeson's wrong. I think we're okay with the amount of Star Wars that we're getting. But I'm gonna keep getting at you, Liam. But I think we're good. It's weird to not have a movie, getting ready for a Star Wars movie at some point. Yes, it is kind of weird. But outside of the original saga, the Skywalker saga, I don't know how much more I want either.
Yeah. I mean,
I
it
mean,
almost solidifies the original saga by not making more movies because it's like, okay, we're getting all these fantastic shows, but at the core of it, like these movies are what it is about. You know what I mean?
right.
So I don't know. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'm fine either way. Hey, keep producing these shows, and I have no problem with it. And if all of a sudden in 2025, after I don't know season 4 of Mandalorian or whatever it is, and all of a sudden a new movie comes out, yeah, I'm going. But
Mhm.
it's I'm not upset. But I mean, to talk about that article that we saw in the Variety article, yeah, the two other movies that are not greenlit at this point, um, by Patty Jenkins, right? I think was one of them, and then
Kevin Feige, I think, was the
yeah,
other
Fig
one.
and Feige was the other
Yeah.
one, right? So up until now, I think they were expecting to have been greenlit, probably possibly in production by now, but we're not. It doesn't sound like we're anywhere near that to those, and I'm sure there's some upset people about that. Um, and and I don't even remember what those movies were supposed to be about. But either way, if Taika, I still like Taika Waititi. I enjoy his work in the many movies and even some of the episodes of The Mandalorian that he's been in. So that he's been involved with. So yeah, 2025 is fine. As long as you keep giving me all my all my Star Wars on Disney Plus.
I just hope that the general reception to whatever the next Star Wars movie is a little bit better than what the reception was to the sequels. I don't know. That remains to be seen. I like to think it will be.
I think it would be too, because if it's truly not going to be about the Skywalker saga,
Right.
if it's something completely different, you don't really have expectations to that.
Yeah, you don't have the
Whereas
fans who are like from an older generation who if you encroach too much on their territory of what the original Star Wars is and what that means, and if you mess it up, then they're like, "Oh no, don't you do that." Whereas
exactly,
if like you're saying, if it's not about the Skywalker saga, it's like, well, you know, that's not Star Wars to me. They can just like
right? Yeah,
write it off more
yeah,
because it doesn't affect what their
yeah.
Star Wars
Then
is,
yeah,
which is
they
kind
could
of
they
silly if you think about it.
yeah
But
they could create a change.org about decanonizing whatever they want. That's what they're
retcon
gonna
the
do.
sequels.
Right? Yeah.
Very last point we wanted to discuss before we get into the nitty gritty of the Bad Batch and Mandalorian, as we're almost 17 minutes into this episode, are the panels at Star Wars Celebration, which takes place exactly a month from today on April 8th. There's a lot of awesome panels taking place for Star Wars Celebration. There's a few in particular that have caught our eye, and so maybe if we could list one or two for you all that particularly drew our interest, and perhaps why those are the ones that we're looking to. What was there one that I think? Because
Okay.
I think at least one that you're gonna take. What
Okay.
what about you?
Well, I'll start with 40 Years of Return of the Jedi. I think that one
Right.
for me would be, because Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've got Luke at his peak, the green saber, Boba Fett's still in there just for a little bit, but he's in there, and um the scene with Vader, and I could do a whole episode on how much I love Return of the Jedi. So 40 years of Return of the Jedi um would definitely be on one of the top list on my list to go to the panel. What about you? What's one of your top?
So there's a few that immediately stuck out, like High Republic, and then we mentioned before we started recording, the 15th anniversary of the Clone Wars is this year, and they're having panels on each of those topics. And there is one for me personally on Monday. That on the April 10th, there's a Star Wars Visions panel. All of those are great, but of course, the one that I think probably a lot of people are most excited about is the Ahsoka panel. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau will both be on that panel, giving more information about the upcoming Ahsoka series. And ultimately, I expect them to officially announce a date at that. I would be shocked if we
Hmm.
come away from Star Wars Celebration and we don't have an official date for Ahsoka set. I read something somewhere, I don't remember where it was, but I was under the impression that it was going to be released in the fall. And I read something somewhere
Oh,
over the last couple days that said it might be late summer now.
oh, really?
Yeah, which would I assume be, like August or
Right.
perhaps even, yeah, probably August if I had to guess what that would mean. But um for many reasons which I've already said earlier, why Ahsoka is my favorite female Star Wars character, my favorite Star Wars character in general. Um that to me is like, this show to me is like taking something that you've always loved and expanding upon it, and hopefully it's you know what I feel like? I feel like probably the same way that mega fans of the original trilogy felt going into the sequel trilogy, where they're like, please don't mess it up, please don't ruin it. I don't think they will. You know,
Yeah.
I trust Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni with Star Wars. Like, it's going to be great. I have no doubts about that. I'm excited to see what they incorporate. Maybe we'll get some Thrawn in there. That's
Yeah.
actually what I want to see the most from this panel. I want to see a Thrawn. Just, I want to see that stuck in there somewhere.
Right. And more than likely, I mean, well, I'll say from my experience, when Star Wars Celebration was here in Chicago in 2019, I was able to go to the Mandalorian panel. So I got lucky
Oh,
and I got
nice.
tickets to that. And they actually did show a little bit of the first episode in that panel. They didn't show that on the streaming side, like
Right.
so. Yeah, if it was streamed to YouTube or wherever it was on StarWarsCelebration.com, they didn't show it there, but they showed it, at the. And I remember they were even like, "All right, everyone, turn off your cameras. You can't be,
Yeah.
you can't be seeing this part, So you can't be recording this part. I think I did it. In fact, I don't care. But
I am most definitely not
yeah,
going to be
I
watching the
won't do this.
bootleg version of
Right, yeah.
Ahsoka.
This will not be on my YouTube channel later on, HothHangout.com. So I would assume there's going to be some footage of Ahsoka, and I bet you that panel is going to be incredibly energetic. It's going to be incredible, and man, I wish we were there.
I'm probably gonna like just block out 3 or 4 hours that day to watch these panels. I'm so stoked. It's gonna be amazing. I can't wait for it. Well, so should we get to the meat and bones or the meat and potatoes of the podcast today? We had 2 fantastic episodes. Bad Batch season 2 episode 12. Yeah, episode 12 titled The Outpost, and then Mandalorian season 3 episode 2 titled, I don't know if I have it was a lot. Oh, The Mines of Mandalore is what it was. And which one did you say you wanted to start with today?
Let's do a Mandalorian, just kind of like we did last week.
Okay, so going through The Mandalorian, we came off of last week. The first episode was it felt like we were dipping our toes in. And now, in retrospect, it kind of feels that way even more because we walked away from the first episode and we weren't like overwhelmed with how incredible things were. It was just kind of like, okay, yeah, we're getting back into the swing of things. This episode, on the other hand, I think with the exception of like the first 2 or 3 minutes, it felt like, where are we going here? And then immediately it was like, oh, we're on Mandalore. Bo-Katan is here. There's this weird organic General Grievous like robot thing that's capturing Mando. Grogu gets to go on his like first solo mission, if you will. He has to like retrieve Bo, bring him back to rescue Din. Everything about this episode, it was amazing, and it culminates at the end when he's going into the waters, which Bo is like sarcastically like, okay, whatever, Mando. And then he gets pulled down, and then we end up seeing what we can assume is a mythosaur, and it was like, this is incredible. This second episode of Mandalorian was everything that I wanted. And again, if you haven't watched our live reaction to that, that's up on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel as well. We were flabbergasted, to use a word. What stood out to you the most from everything that happened in this episode?
So my admiration for Bo-Katan has skyrocketed even more.
Yes. Can we add her to our favorite female Star Wars character?
Yeah. We'll pencil her in for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because she is such a powerful figure, both in animation and now in live action, right? I don't know if there's many that make that cross that way from animated to. I know we have Ahsoka now. I mean, that's something that is coming up. But as of right now, Bo-Katan, wow, just amazing job. Just the, oh man, it's so good. So just the way that she helps out Mando, and some of the lines she said, she's like, "Oh, do you think your dad was the only Mandalorian?" Like just like that snark and that sarcasm, but also that there's reason behind it because she's she is the true Mandalorian too.
Right. I mean, she
She's been
arguably
through it.
has more claim to being called the Mandalorian.
Right, right. Maybe that's what the show is about. It's actually about her.
Oh.
Um, but everything you said, Grogu going on his first little mission there. Um, we're seeing a little bit of the development of his Force abilities, the little flips that he can do, and he doesn't just rotate in chairs and steal candy. Everyone, he could knock down some aliens as well.
Yeah.
Um, but everything about this, and I mentioned this during our reaction. Everything about this episode was Star Wars to me. We've had such a long time with, and nothing against. We enjoyed watching Andor. We've enjoyed watching Bad Batch, but this was Star Wars. This was the Star Wars that we're used to seeing. We've got all the alien creatures that we have to fight. We see huge huge creatures out there with the mythosaur. We see Mandalorians just flying everywhere. We see Grogu using Force, and the Junior General Grievous and the super scary spider droid thing that he's in. And yeah, I did not like that part. So
Love spiders, right?
love spiders. Oh my gosh, when that came out, I'm like, oh, at 3 in the morning, I wasn't ready for that. So I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the episode, and to where it left off, just kind of like what you were saying. Where do you think what is upcoming for the next episode?
I don't know if we'll get the immediate satisfaction of having a mythosaur tamed and rode in the next episode. I think that might be something we see a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
As far as where the show itself is going, that honestly is a good question to pose, because up until this point, this whole season has been about Mando getting to where he was at the end of yesterday's, or when was that? 2 days ago's episode, or yesterday's. Wow,
Yesterday's.
it's been a weird.
Technically, it's today's.
It's been a long 24 hours, let me tell you. But yeah, the whole season, all 2 episodes of it, has been building up to Mando getting to the waters so that he can be redeemed as a Mandalorian. So now there's not really a ton of direction as to where are we going with the rest of this season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to very clearly be a conversation between Din and Bo regarding what they just saw underwater. How they go from there, that I don't know, honestly.
Right,
and
yeah.
I think that's what makes me excited coming off of this episode, looking forward to the last 6 episodes of the season, is that we don't really know what direction we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sometimes when you know the path of a show, you can almost foresee that there's going to be like a little bit of filler here and there. I genuinely don't know what the rest of the season has in store for us. So long or short answer to your question is that I don't know, but I'm okay not knowing. It's exciting.
Yeah. I think what I'm interested in right now is the Darksaber.
Right.
Where, because right now I believe it's in their possession.
Din's possession,
Din's possession, and I kind of mentioned this on the reaction.
Yeah.
Technically speaking,
didn't the droid defeat him?
Didn't the droid General Grievous defeat Din, and then Bo-Katan came in and defeated the droid? I mean, I don't know. I mean, those line up to me. So is it already hers? I mean, but either way, I mean, we know that she wants the Darksaber, right? So there's that conflict that is going to be there.
Right.
And will that turn into a battle between them? Something like that. Well, because I'm kind of game for that, to be honest. If it comes down to it, I mean, like you said, if anybody has more claim to Mandalore, it is her for sure. It's her birthright. That's where it belongs. That's where she belongs. So and he even said he's never even been on that planet.
Right.
That moon. That's where I was. And again, I really do, and I mentioned this as well. I really appreciate them saying the planets as they're landing.
Yeah.
Like just some little thing like, well, there's Mandalore and there's Concordia. And I'm like, oh, check. We're like, all right, Wikipedia. Let's see, everything we know about that. So I do appreciate that. But either way, I am excited to see where the rest of the season goes because, like you said, we left the first episodes knowing that all right, he needs to get to these waters and kind of uh get forgiven for his sin of taking off his helmet. Now he's gone there, practically drowned, saw a mythosaur, and so we've resolved that end has been tied up with a nice little knot. So
Yes.
now what? So now what? And if they do these little 2 episode arcs, I don't know if that's what they're gonna end up doing or but yeah, I'm excited to see what is coming up with the rest of the season. And I mean, literally 2 episodes in, and we already got this type of reaction. I was super happy about that.
Yeah. I think you're all right though with the Darksaber being at the center of the rest of the season. Because I think at one point or another there will inevitably be some sort of conflict between Din and Bo. I'd be very surprised if there's not the rest of this season. As to how much the Darksaber is going to influence that conflict, we'll have to see. Because I mean, she could have very easily just like left him at
Yeah,
many points. Like, she could have never rescued him. Even after she rescued him when he was passed out, she could have left and taken the saber. So I mean, she clearly has a respect for him, and I even noted at one point during our watch through, there was this part where they're walking through the caves, and I don't even remember what the remark was, but it was kind of like offhanded and kind of smirky. And I was like, "Love it, love sparks flying here."
yeah,
And I was kind of half joking, and then she looked at Grogu and was like, "What are you looking at?" And it almost
right,
re-emphasized what I was thinking. I was like, "Oh,
right,
maybe
right,
she does have feelings for him." So
right, right.
I think that could actually happen by the end of the season. Bo and Din kind of getting together and being the Mando power couple, if you will.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about because they did make a quick and I don't know if it was a jab, but they made a quick mention of Boba Fett right when he had landed on
Oh
Tatooine, right?
yeah.
Like, oh, you're gonna go after Boba Fett or something like that, something of those lines. Wh- and this is kind of off topic of like the season or everything like that. Do you think that they should have made Boba Fett Mandalorian, like the Mandalorian? Like, should this show been about him and he is doing all of this instead of
Mm,
just a whole other person kind of doing it? Would that have
right.
been? Because I mean, to the outside viewer, you have 2 series that have Mandalorians, right? You have the Boba Fett and you have the Mandalorian. 2 of the episodes in Boba Fett were mainly Mandalorian of the man of Din Djarin, right? Um, should they have just said, you know what? Let's just make the and this is just a talking point, whatever, But when I was watching this episode, I actually watched it for a second time today,
Oh yeah.
and when I saw that line, I'm like, you know what? They really could have just could have just not had Din Djarin. They could have had Boba Fett, and this could have been his story. And would that have been? And they would have had to tie some things together. Obviously, the whole Sarlacc pit and everything like that. But if this what ended up happening to him, do you think that would have been? You think that they could have pulled that off, or do you think that would have been a better story for Boba Fett? Could this have been Boba Fett's story?
It, could it have been? Yes. Do I think it should have been? I don't think so. And hindsight is 2020 because I love where we're at with the character. And where the Mandalorian has taken us. Um well, and one thing would also be like I don't think there is the heritage of being a Mandalorian there with Boba,
Mm-hmm.
like there is with Din, but probably outside of the actual plot of the story, it's kind of going back to the same thing we talked about infringing upon people's
Right. Yeah.
idea. I feel like, and you kind of saw this with the Boba Fett show, honestly. Like there were many people who were fans of the original trilogy, episodes 5 and 6, particularly, who watched Boba and they're like, "That's not my Boba Fett." You know what I mean? So, yeah, could it have been done? Yeah, I think it could have. Is it something that would have been better? I don't know. I like to think I really enjoy what they've done with it and with Din. Um, but I think I worry that if they went that avenue, I think it would have affected, not that I care personally, but a lot of people might. I think it would have affected the way some people feel about the show Mandalorian. And it's hard to say what that would be because now we know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason it is as successful as it is because it's a new character and because it's something that isn't taking previous Star Wars stuff and trying to change anything or expound upon it in a way that could frustrate certain groups of fans. And again, not that that's should be the decision making philosophies when they're creating these shows, but it is there nonetheless. Right, and we saw it with Boba Fett, the show. So they could have, but I'm glad they didn't. I guess that's my short answer.
And I think I agree with you there that that it's probably good that they didn't. I mean, a lot of this, especially the first season, was, although it was called this is called The Mandalorian, it was about Grogu. Mm-hmm. That's what drew a lot of people to the show.
Yeah.
And to have had, if you were to have somebody like a Boba Fett, who kind of already was solidified in Star Wars lore, for, how many years, so
40, yeah, more than 40.
Yeah, right, yeah. So, and like you said, if you have that Boba Fett all of a sudden kind of tending as a dad to Grogu, would that have worked? I don't know, right? Because you wanted Boba Fett. If you have Boba Fett being the main character, being the Mandalorian, then he would be, the main character. He would be everything about the show, not kind of second fiddle to Grogu. So, just thought it would be an interesting question that came up while I was watching the show for the second time.
Yeah, that's a good thinking project. A good thing to reflect upon the shows we have and think about how they could be different if there were certain things changed like that.
There's a parallel universe where that happened, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah. What is that, like the Marvel theory now?
The multiverse. The multiverse.
Yeah. By the way, still haven't seen Ant-Man yet. I need to go watch that one.
I have not watched it either. Yeah.
I might go sometime.
Speaking of not going to movies, that's...
Yeah. So on the live reaction, you gave it an A+. I gave it an A. I only gave it an A because I was comparing it to my favorite Mando episode of the end of season 2. Spoiler if you haven't seen the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, where Luke comes and it was like, how is this real right now? But overall, I think I said this is probably, apart from that episode at the end of season 2, episode 2 of season 3 was my favorite episode of Mandalorian thus far.
Now that I've had some time to watch it again, and it's not like 3-4 in the morning, I was able to have a little bit more thoughts about it. Yeah, although I said A+, I'll bump it slightly down to an A.
Walking it back.
Listen, this is our podcast. I can do whatever we want. But yeah, so I'll give it that A. You could tell I was super excited with everything that happened with it, and I still am. But when you mentioned the Luke episode, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. So I forgot that curve. I forgot the Mandalorian
the Mando curve.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll give it that A.
But overall, still like incredible episode. Did you have any more thoughts on Mando before we hop into Bad Batch stuff?
No, just Bo-Katan. I think Bo-Katan's the Mandalorian at this point, maybe.
It makes me like a little bit sad that there's only 8 episodes in every season of this, because I'm like, man, how can we progress the story to a point where it feels
we're a quarter of the way through.
I know, it's wild. I feel like it literally did just start, and we're already like, I want it to be enticing, and it feels so hard to make a show enticing when you only have like cumulatively, what would it be, like 6 hours of runtime for an entire season of a show. So I'm excited still, but a little bit nervous that the last 6 episodes won't be as fulfilling as the end of season 2 was, but that remains to be seen. Well, we are almost 40 minutes in, and we still need to touch base on the Bad Batch. So let's go ahead and hop on the Bad Batch side of things. I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that the Bad Batch was, or that this week was the first week where it felt like we had 2 episodes of different shows going on at the same time, maybe with the exception of when Tales of the Jedi was going on, and Andor at the same time. But I think this tops that easily. These two together. This episode of the Bad Batch and the episode of the Mandalorian that we just discussed, both incredible episodes in the same week. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the Bad Batch episode, because I think you know how I feel about it. And anyone who's listened to an episode of the podcast, we bring it up almost every episode that we discuss Bad Batch, how much I love Crosshair. And so for the first 5 seconds of this episode to be Crosshair on the screen, I was so happy, Joey. I saw him and I was like, yes, he's back. It was like 9 episodes that we didn't get to see him.
Right.
And yeah, I guess it turned out the wait was worth it, because this was, I think this was my favorite episode of the season. I had to think about that one because there was a really great episode with the what was her name? Senator Tucci. Yeah, that episode I also really loved. I think it was episode 6, 7. I don't remember. That the episode was Senator Tucci. But I think this one tops it because it just felt like a great story arc for Crosshair. Very, very briefly, he gets sent out on this planet with this really big jerk of a lieutenant. Easily, I don't hate any Star Wars character. I was thinking, I was like, is there a character? While I was watching, I thought, is there a character I hate in Star Wars? And I thought, there's characters I don't prefer or don't like, but I've never hated a character like this lieutenant in this episode. I mean, basically straight up calling clones like, meat shields, trash. Like, he has a quote that says, I don't like used equipment. At another point, he said something to the effect of, like, at the very end, he said, he doesn't, that's a waste of resources. Just like, this guy was so infuriating. And this great clone we meet along the way in Mayday develops kind of this relationship with Crosshair as briefly as they knew one another. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the episode, Mayday doesn't make it through to the end of the episode. But
the name like Mayday,
Yeah, maybe that was foreshadowed in his name, and I just should have seen it coming. But Mayday and his crew, only 2 of which remain, have been stranded on this planet, and the Empire is basically just kind of disregarding them, not sending them reinforcements or supplies that they need. And this lieutenant comes in and is basically like trying to boss his way around. And then while they're getting accustomed to being there, there's an attack on the base, and the only 2 other remaining members are killed in the action. And so it's just Mayday and Crosshair and all these other stormtroopers with this lieutenant who have just arrived. And 2 of the crates are stolen in the raid. And so the lieutenant sends, against their will, Mayday and Crosshair to retrieve the crates. They find out the only thing in the crates is just gear, or what do you call it? Armor for stormtroopers. And they're like, we came all the way out here for this, and like an avalanche, and they almost die, and they, Crosshair helps him all the way back to the base, where Mayday, being he, unfortunately does not make it. And the end of this episode, Joey, I cannot tell you, never in my life watching a movie, I'm trying to think, I don't want to walk this back, but I think this is right. Never in my life watching a movie or show or anything have I been so adamantly rooting for someone. I was like, Crosshair, shoot him right now. Like, I was like, Crosshair, shoot him. And then, he did it, and I was like, oh, yes, that was such a good end to this episode. So I just had to throw my little spiel in there about why this is my favorite episode of the season so far. All that being said, sorry I rambled. What did you think about the episode?
I think you said it all. I mean, the relationship that was built between Mayday and Crosshair, and the very little time that they had together, the moment when they both realized what they were trying to retrieve was the Imperial Stormtrooper armor and helmets and all that.
Mm-hmm.
To realize that it sounds like they were there for a whole year trying to protect this stuff, right? Mayday had lost his entire crew in that time, and we've watched clones this entire for years now. They're not just soldiers; they are brothers. These are brothers that he has lost this entire time, as much as detached as Clone Force 99 was to the rest of the clone troopers, they're still brothers as well. So to you saw that connection, between those two brothers. It was very evident. It was very in front of it, and you could tell even when, and this may have been the first time that I've seen Crosshair so emotional.
Yeah.
When the avalanche came and he kind of, he punched his way out of the snow and he found Mayday, and he was just really trying to get Mayday to wake up and go. And just like any clone would say, Mayday's like, go, just go. I'm not gonna make it. And instead of letting him go, like you almost expect Crosshair to do, yeah. Like if he would have just left,
I thought
you
he
would have
was
been
going
like,
to.
you would have been like, Crosshair,
Hmm.
but he didn't. He put a helmet on him. He carried him however long back to the base or back to the outpost, and and did all he could to try to save him,
Hmm.
and ultimately not to. And when he died, you could tell that he was very upset about it. Um, and Ben, I was the same way when that scene came, and I'm like, please shoot this guy, please.
Yeah.
If there's any time to be dark in Star Wars, I am allowing it right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what the Emperor wants from us. But
Mm.
but you did mention that I was wearing the red shirt yesterday during the reaction video. Maybe I have turned to the dark side already.
Yeah. I'm the light
You've
side
done it.
now.
You've done it. But either way, I mean, just the emotion that was in that, um, and to have, I love it when shows do that, when you make the audience want something and you give it to them right away. Because really, I mean, what was the other solution out of that? Um, so it was to take him down. It was to take him down, and then,
Yeah.
and I will admit, when Crosshair falls over right after that, I was like, don't you? Because I mean, because I
Don't
mean,
die too.
don't do
Yeah.
this, yeah. Because I mean, Mayday died, right? Mayday
Yeah.
died of
Well,
the same
yes,
of the
we
same
pretty sure
types
Mayday
of
died.
things. Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Mayday died, and probably the things that Mayday had experienced. I mean, maybe it was a little bit more severe than what Crosshair did too. But I mean, it seemed like they were walking through the snow for a very long time. That's not very healthy. And so it's very conceivable that he could have died right there too. So I'm like, don't do this. And then when it faded to black, I was like, oh no, there's no way. And then he wakes up in the medical bay or whatever it
Hmm.
was, with a Mary. I think that's the name that was of
Yeah,
the.
I don't know her name. I know it's the same doctor who was at the end of the episode where Nala Se was
Oh,
being
was it? Okay.
escorted back. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I
Yeah.
will say this. This is my conspiracy theory of the day.
Okay. I love it.
Um,
Let's hear it.
is she a clone?
The
Is she?
doctor?
Yeah.
I think she is.
Oh, she is. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
She is a clone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's not so controversial, but it seemed like that she was, because she has the same type of accent as Omega, so that's why I was like,
Yeah.
oh, interesting. I wonder if she's a clone, and maybe this is just well known, and I just don't have no idea. But and I don't know. But who do you think? Who do you think the doctor is? I mean, well, we left, knowing that, she gave him a shot to either like calm him down or put him to sleep. But what's next for Crosshair now?
Yeah. She injected him with something, or maybe she was extracting something from him with that big needle at the end of the episode. Um, I think this is still a bit of the mystery as to where we're going with the Bad Batch, A, but B, how this is also going to tie in to everything that Star Wars is producing in the next 5 years or so, or even longer than that, honestly. Um, Up until this point, there's not been a lot of like, I don't know, I don't want to say lore, but like, magic and like, all
Mm-hmm.
this other stuff that you hear about in legends, like cloning and all this other
Midichlorians.
with midichlorians, yeah. Like Palpatine cloning himself is a
Mm-hmm.
thing in legends. And so this whole show feels like a way to bridge the cinematic Star Wars universe to the old Legends
Mm,
content, kind of being like,
interesting.
here's some stuff that was, in Legends that made it cool, like cloning Palpatine, for example. So, I don't see really what other direction they're going with all this cloning stuff. It's clear that the Empire wants the inside information about the cloning. Like, why else would they bring Nala Se? Why else would they, do these tests on Crosshair? I don't know if they're injecting him or extracting or whatever they're doing. Clearly, they want to know and understand more about cloning, assuming the reason to be to produce like some super clones or something. I don't know what they're gonna do. So that is what I'm most outside of the story of the Bad Batch, because I think Crosshair is definitely going to reunite with the rest of the Bad Batch at this point. Hopefully, in the next episode or two. Hopefully, they don't wait until the finale to do it. But outside of the story and how it pertains to Star Wars as a whole, I am eagerly anticipating how they're going to connect this to other shows,
Hmm.
with how cloning is going to be an influence in future Star Wars content.
I think it's great because I feel like Bad Batch could easily be one of those series that is just slept on. Like people just don't kind of check out and
Yeah.
watch I know one person that watched the first couple episodes of season 1 and just said, "Nah, not for me." And
Oh, really,
to
dude?
each their own. To each
That
their own,
that
right?
first episode of season one, maybe with the exception of a few episodes, is one of my favorites of Bad Batch. But
Right, yeah.
like you said, to each their own.
Yeah, to each their own, and just the fact that I knew one person means that there's probably a lot more
Yeah.
that are like that. But if it does in fact build this bridge into later storylines, whether it's movies, I mean, like with Mandalorian, it's the same thing where you have to be watching Boba Fett for a little bit too in order to understand some of the story. So there,
Right.
and where, and I've mentioned this before, I love when they kind of interweave particular shows and books and all this, um because because you're like, oh, I remember that from episode 4 of this show, and
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things about being part of this fandom is that stuff, and especially when I watch like on YouTube, or someone sends a tweet like, oh, actually that's from I'm like, oh, it is from that, because I don't have that brain capacity for sure. So I'll let somebody else tell me about it, but um so yeah, if that ends up being the Bad Batch, is one of those shows that it's must watch TV, because if you want to know about this movie coming up, you got to watch this,
Yeah.
and even from a marketing perspective, that's smart.
Yeah. Yep.
It's smart to have all of these properties together, kind of, dipping their toe in here and there, and
Mhm.
like, because I mean, I remember when Mandalorian, when Ahsoka came up, you know, then they had this whole thing like, who's Ahsoka? And you're like, who's this Ahsoka person? And you see on Disney Plus the top 5 episodes of Clone Wars you have to watch for Ahsoka. And so I'm
Right.
just like, it's just easy way to market some things. And like, oh, did you know we have Ahsoka figures and whatever, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy to do that. So of course we want all of this to happen because it's good storytelling, but they're a business too. So they, of course, they're going to lump all that stuff in together. All that to say, yeah, if Bad Batch ends up being that bridge between the older, you know no longer canon Legends type of stuff, into, and actually bring it into what's considered canon, I think that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I could easily see Bad Batch being that sleeper show like 10 years from now, when there's something new in Star Wars, and maybe a more casual fan says, "What? How does that make sense? Like, where did this come from, or where did that happen?" You're like, "Oh, did you ever watch the Bad Batch?" You're
Yeah, yeah.
like, "The what? Oh, that's why you don't understand it, because you didn't
Right, yeah,
watch the cloning thing and the bat."
yeah,
That's
yeah,
where I
right.
feel like Bad Batch is headed. It's going to be some sort of linchpin in understanding Star Wars as a whole. Oh, and to note on what you said about kind of these shows, um, the marketing of it all, and it playing off of one another. I think we saw that explicitly for the first time with Boba and Mando, where if you didn't watch Boba Fett, you would have been very confused. the first episode of this season of Mandalorian. So I think that's almost, I don't know who's Disney or Dave or John or whoever it is. That's their way of kind of easing us into saying, okay, look, like unless you watch everything, you can't complain about not understanding why things aren't the way they are. Which for people like us that consume everything that they make, it's not a big deal. But I could see how it might be frustrating for a more casual fan.
And I've heard the complaint, like, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not an overwhelming amount of content. And all right, maybe Liam
Always goes back to Liam.
It always goes back to Liam. Maybe there is something to that. I mean, the volume, the sheer volume of what's going out right now. I mean, to us, it's not a big investment. I'm watching. I'm gonna if Star Wars is on my show on my streaming service, I'm gonna watch it. I mean, so what are we talking about? An hour and a half every week to watch it? I mean, that's nothing. That's nothing as far as consumption. But I think what people are talking about is, I mean, because normally when you have a season, it's like you have one season and then you're done. But what we have here is you have one season. All right, well, we have another show of one season. Oh, we have another show of, so I could see like the longevity of it, and now we're doubling up on some shows. I can see how that can be a little bit overwhelming if you are not that into it. I mean, if you're looking for lightsabers, if you're looking for, Force users and stuff like that, you're not going to find that in Andor. You're not going to find that in Bad Batch for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I get it, but it just helps the storyline so much more when you have all of this content, all these different stories to pull from, all these characters to pull from, whether it's animated or in books or wherever. I think it just makes for a better storyline overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very last thing I'll say on the Bad Batch, and then we can rate the episode and get out of here. The change of character in Crosshair in this episode is the reason why it was so great. We have seen him go from where he was with the Bad Batch to basically flat out betraying them, to almost coming back and saying, we can still work together. And then, that bond almost being broken, and him slowly over the course of, I guess it's technically only been like 2 episodes that we've seen him in, 2 or 3 that we've seen him in this season, but it's felt like longer, I guess, because we didn't see him for 9 episodes. Seeing his disdain grow with the Empire to the point where he literally just broke. And this was a great episode. I'm going to give this Bad Batch episode, again, this is on the Bad Batch curve, because I think I liked the Mando episode more. But as far as Bad Batch episodes go, I'm giving this one an A as well. So I gave an A to both of this week's episodes.
Yeah. I'm going to give an A also. Easy A.
Easy A.
Easy A. There's no question for all the things that you've already said with just the development of Crosshair in one episode. It was just insane. And really the development of how I view him, because like I said, even at the beginning, I'm like, he's gonna leave. He, even though they had already been through a lot, I'm like, he's leaving Mayday. There's no way, he's gonna save him, because they even made like a few jokes about dead weight, So I thought, I'm like, oh yeah, there's no way. But then he often takes him with him, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is good, and to do something that I never thought he would do is shoot a lieutenant of the Empire. He did that too, So just the exact moment you wanted him to turn, he does.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited, and like you said, maybe not the next episode, a reunion with the rest of the Bad Batch, but pretty soon, I hope, because that was episode 12, I believe.
Yeah, only
right?
3 more weeks. 4 episodes, 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because the last one's a double as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm 3 more weeks. I can't believe it. That's crazy. Yep. And oddly enough, in 3 weeks we'll be more than halfway through Mandalorian.
Yes, it's wild to believe. Some great Star Wars, both having been consumed already and still to come our way, hopefully. again, only 3 more weeks of Bad Batch, 6 more weeks of Mando. Star Wars Celebration is in 4 weeks, and May the 4th is in less than 2 months. So, like 3,
Mm-hmm.
4, 6, and 8 weeks,
Yeah.
all pretty big, significant Star Wars
and
related events.
I forgot to mention the Jedi Battlescars book came out yesterday as well.
Oh, definitely gonna
so
have to check that out.
So gotta check that out, and it's everywhere, man. Star Wars is everywhere.
It is. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Well, this was a podcast, a throwback to podcasts of old because we went a little bit longer. But hey, it's okay when we're talking and discussing Star Wars because sometimes you just get lost in the things you love, like we tend to do sometimes. But hey, we want to say thank you to each of you for listening and for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hi YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't checked out our Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 2 reaction, that is also up and available on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. This was a good one. I feel like I was just so excited this whole time. And so I'm very much looking forward to all that has to come with both the Bad Batch and Mandalorian. You got any final thoughts, Joey?
Crosshair, Grogu, we love you guys.
Those are some great characters right there. Yeah. Well, we greatly appreciate each and every single one of you listening or watching. And of course, may the Force be with you always.